Engage-disengage is an exercise we use to counter condition and desensitize triggers. The first part of the exercise is to mark and reward engage or looking at the trigger. The second part is to mark and reward disengage, which can be looking at the handler or simply looking away from the trigger.
Click when she looks.
The key to success with this exercise is to keep the dog sub-threshold. We're seeing stiff body language and she hits the end of the leash several times. These are indicators that she's reaching threshold. We're seeing a high stiff tail, a high posture with a raised head, stiff legs and stiff walking. It's almost like she's walking on stilts. We're also seeing prolonged eye contact and she's slowing down.
With the trigger.
These changes in her body language is indicating that she's experiencing arousal, or in other words, she's experiencing stress.
Very good.
Now her body language is escalating even more. She has a high, stiff, fast wag, almost a vibrating wag on her tail. She's panting. She's hypervigilant, scanning the area. She's also having some issues disengaging from the trigger, even though there is a clicker involved. I'm giving lots of direction in where to move in order to create more distance to lower the arousal to prevent a reaction. In a situation like this, when we are noticing the arousal going up, our main goal is to get the arousal down, get more relaxed body language, and make sure that the dog stays sub-threshold. Here we have a very clear escalation of a high vibrating tail, staring, freezing, which is just an indicator that she's way too close. We need to create more distance. She's reaching threshold here. Threshold means that a dog is at their limit to what they can cope with and they are about to react. When a dog goes over threshold is when we see the reaction. Here she was pulling, staring, and almost lunging. She also presented a low growl at this point. This is the dog going over threshold. It's not a severe reaction, but this is still a reaction that we need to immediately recover from. When a dog goes over threshold, there is a release of cortisol from their adrenal glands, or other known as a stress response, which is not healthy for dogs to experience. Our main goal when this happens is to decompress and recover. It is damaging for dogs to stay in this emotional state for a prolonged time. If the dog can't recover or they go over threshold several times within a session, end the session. When we decompress and recover, we want to increase distance, encourage sniffing, encourage choice. So if the dog wants to move away, they can move away. We can do this by scattering treats, for example, to encourage sniffing, or letting the dog just walk away and sniff a tree like she was doing here. Never force a dog to move towards the trigger or to stay in a situation that they are not comfortable with. This should not be a situation where the dog feels like they are forced to stay in. If they're not comfortable, we need to accommodate and make sure that they are comfortable. We're starting to see some more relaxed body language. We're still seeing some stress and some tension, but it's not enough to end the exercise. We just want to make sure that we manage this and we observe her body language in order to keep her sub-threshold.
Very good.
Distance will be your friend when doing this exercise. Make sure to not continuously move closer to the trigger because that will make it really hard for the dog to cope. Move a little closer and then move further away, and then move a little closer again and then move further away again. This will give the dog a chance to get closer and assess and observe, and then move away and disengage and sniff and decompress. We're now starting to see more of a relaxed body language. We're starting to see a little bit of a more soft wag of the tail. We're still seeing stress signaling, so they're kind of intertwined at this point. The most important thing is that we're noticing them and we're accommodating accordingly. So we're teaching the dog that, hey, I see that you're struggling. Let's make it a little bit easier again. This will not only teach her to cope, it would also teach her that there's someone at the end of the leash that she can trust and that has her back.
Can kind of go up in between these.
When counter conditioning, it's obviously important to pair the trigger with something pleasant. That's the whole point of counter conditioning. But it's also so important to teach the dog trust, that they have the ability to exist in this environment, that nothing bad is happening, and that we can communicate with them and they can communicate with us. The most important thing to take away from this exercise is trust and just relationship building. Handler and dog should be a team. We're seeing some absolutely beautiful communication between handler and dog throughout this video. Both of them are becoming very clicker savvy, and that's just a way for them to communicate. Dog is following handler's body language. Handler is reading dog's body language. It's fantastic to see.
Nice.
We're now starting to see more of an emotional response being created. She's getting a little bit excited. It's not a complete conditioned emotional response at this point, but we're starting to see that slight anticipation that I'm looking at the dog and now I'm expecting my treat. This is the beginning of creating an emotional response. Counter conditioning means that we are trying to change the emotional response of a trigger. A trigger means that there is a stimulus that has an existing conditioned response. So, for example, here we have a dog that has learned that other dogs are scary. We're trying to change this into, whenever I see a dog, my handler gives me chicken or hot dogs or cheese. So the changed emotional response would result in, I see a dog, I get excited, rather than I see a dog, I get scared.
Very good.